Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, November the 30th, 2021, and I hope you had a good Thanksgiving holiday week. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Today is Giving Tuesday, a day in which we give to others. We give to our favorite charities, nonprofits, educational entities, whether that be your high school or university or college or what have you. Dig deep and give on this Tuesday to your favorite charity or nonprofit. It's a great day. While we're talking about giving, let me pay tribute this morning to the women of Impact 100, Northwest Florida. We've had them on the show before, but I have to pay tribute to the job that these women did this year, with 418 women donating $418,000 in transformational grants to nonprofit organizations in Okaloosa and Walton County, Florida, and doing this during a pandemic. Impact 100 empowers women as philanthropists and leaders by bridging the geographic areas of our region and by leveraging the talents of diverse women to be a positive force for good in our communities. Now, the idea is pretty simple. 100 women donate $1,000 each to form a $100,000 high-impact grant that allows a 501c3 nonprofit organization in Okaloosa and Walton County, Florida, to accomplish extraordinary things. And membership is open to all women over 18. 100% of each member's contribution is awarded to a nonprofit organization, with none of that contribution going to administrative costs. Application for the grants are accepted for projects in 5 focus areas: arts and culture, education, the environment, recreation and preservation, family, and health and wellness. The members of Impact 100 Northwest Florida come together to determine which nonprofits projects receive funding through the Impact 100 grant process. Impact, since its founding in 2012, Impact 100 Florida has given away $4.3 million. Impact 100 is a global organization. If you are interested, you can probably find an organization, a local chapter somewhere near you. Our G-list guest today is Kai Stevens, the founding director of the Alabama Prison Arts and Education, most esteemed, the longest running arts and education programs in the country, offering equal access to sustained and quality educational experiences to those incarcerated in prison. We'll get into that later on in the show. I certainly look forward to that discussion. Now, the G-list, of course, is sponsored by Mainstream Financial. Mainstream Financial brings financial vision and clarity to your retirement plans. Talk to the folks at Mainstream Financial. You don't want to let your money run out before you do. So this edition of Tuesday with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for over 34 years. Let's hear what Best Girl has to say.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl creates the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards is a Mobile, Alabama native, currently living in Birmingham, but she gets around a good little bit. Barbara, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Where are you today?
I'm back in Birmingham. Just got back in yesterday after a week-long stay over in the Atlanta area. So
okay.
I'm back at home.
And you went to the big ball game.
I did. I did a lot of moving around while I was in Atlanta.
Give me your reaction.
Tom, I tell you, I've never been so exhausted after a football game. I felt like I was on the field myself. I think I stood the entire game pretty much, and I screamed and hollered for the full time. I didn't have a voice on Sunday morning. I thought our players played extremely well. I'm so proud of them and how they stepped up to the call for the offense, especially TJ Finley. And on defense, I want to give a shout out to Derek Hall and Roger McCreary. Those two guys played the game of their lives. I think they were just phenomenal. Not just them, but the entire defense really surprised me. And to hold Alabama to that few points during the most of the game, I think is just phenomenal.
That number 99 played a big game.
He did. He did.
Was TD Moultrie.
Moultrie, yes, he had a great game as well.
He played some ball.
Yes.
Well, it was a great game. It's unfortunate that our team did not win, but it was a great game, and I was proud of the guys. I was proud for them, and hurt for them. You know, it's a game you remember the rest of your life, especially when it comes down to that. So
yeah. I was gonna say, as a former player, you know all about how that feels. I guess when you played that hard and then still come up as a
the games. All these many years later, the games that mean the most to you are not the games that you won, but the ones that you let get away.
Absolutely.
And you know, games where you were maybe the underdog and you got to right to the edge of it. And you just didn't quite get over. We played them 3 times. The first time we won on a miracle game. The second time we got blown out. And the third game that was very close to similar to the game that we had on Saturday. We lost 17-13. But it was an incredible game. It was probably one of the games I enjoyed the most. We just came up a little short.
Yes.
And so I think obviously Coach Harsin is making some changes. And,
yes, he is. Yes, he is. On yesterday, Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, was terminated. So it's going to be interesting to see who fills that role.
Now, you gave a statistic right before we came on.
Yes.
That Auburn had scored something like 15 points total.
Auburn has only scored. They scored a total of 15 points the last 5 games in the second half of the game.
A total of 15 points.
Total of 15 points for 5 games. That's
that means people figured out what we were doing and stopped us from doing it.
Absolutely. And we didn't make any kind of adjustments, you know, when they adjusted, which is not good. So I can understand why Coach Bobo is no longer with us, and I think at least several alums are really happy with that decision. So it'll be interesting to see. I saw a couple of comments last night about who the top 5 candidates might be for that job, and
who is that? I haven't seen that.
I'll have to look them up, but I think I'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
And I'll have that information for you.
Now, I didn't ask you if you had anything you wanted to talk about.
I just want to remind our viewers that, you know, it's 25 shopping days left before Christmas. So if you did get out in the crowds on last week on Black Friday and over the weekend to do some of your shopping, Cyber Monday, then you still have 25 days left.
Well, I did buy, I did do some Christmas shopping this past week, but I did it online and it should be here in the next day or so.
Very good.
And then I'll figure out what else I'm going to do. But I doubt if I'll get out there, especially with my knee having been operated on. I doubt if I'm going to get out there in the crowds.
Well, one of my traditions is I always get out on that Friday and do some shopping. And of course I did this year as well. And there was not any crowds out there. I was really surprised.
That's what my wife said. Joyce said.
Yes.
She said it didn't. She was surprised. There weren't a lot of people out.
Not at all. I actually went out not as early as I planned to. I planned to be out in the stores by 6 a.m. That didn't happen. So when I finally got up and got out about 10:30, there was hardly anybody on the roads, which really surprised me. So when I got to the first store, no lines, you know, less than 10 people in the store, and it was a pretty large store. So I was a little shocked. and everywhere I went, it was pretty much that same way. Just wasn't big crowds out.
Well, I tell you, Joyce was telling me she had to drive up to Auburn, as a matter of fact, and the number of cars that were on the highway. This was on Sunday.
Okay.
But not only the number of cars, the number of RV vehicles, and
Yes.
that people are really trying to avoid the COVID by renting or buying RVs and traveling that
Absolutely.
way and not having to stay in hotels
Right.
and things such as that. So that may
Yeah.
be one of the reasons why you didn't see as many people.
That's true. As I mentioned, I came back to Birmingham on yesterday. I planned to come back on Sunday. I checked Waze. I use Waze to figure out how long the commute is going to be. And it added an additional almost 2 hours to my trip because I think just because of heavy
Wow.
traffic. And I decided I
Wow.
would just wait until yesterday, let the traffic die down a little bit, and then make that trip back home. So, yeah, it was a lot of people on the road traveling.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's get Michael Walker on here. Michael Walker is president of the Walker Insurance Agency. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He actually grew up in Auburn, Alabama. Michael, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing well. Hope you are too. And good morning to you, Barbara.
Good morning.
So I'll get your take on the game now, since you were there as well. Did you stand up the whole time with Barbara?
I did not. Absolutely not.
Hey, give me your take.
Well, my take is that Auburn came to play. As I've told many people, that Auburn is not afraid of Alabama like a lot of other teams are. A lot of teams lose the game to Alabama just when Alabama walks out with the scripted A and they're in awe. But Auburn players, regardless of what their record may be, when it comes to that game, they stand up and they fight. So they did very well. I think Derek Mason did his job. I have to agree that our offense, the games that we lost all in the second half due to inconsistency and lack of productivity on the offensive side of the ball. And, it's funny. They've always said that, well, you couldn't run the ball. The offensive line can't block. And I remember in the beginning of the year, they were doing more creative ways to get our different running backs the ball. And they stopped doing that. A lot of things they did early in the year that were successful, they went away from. Most notably, Sean Shivers, number 8. They used to bring him in and let him run the ball. And he runs tough for a little guy.
Yes.
But they stopped doing that. They started bringing him in just on third downs to throw a pass. Well, that's predictable. That's why things change. I also told you, Tom, a couple of times what I like initially was that sometimes they would have Tank Bigsby in as well as Jakar's Hunter. And they didn't know who was going to get the ball. And they would run different plays, and one of them would end up with the ball. But they stopped doing that. So I don't know. Sometimes people outsmart themselves. But overall, I think the players played very well. Like I said before, part of our issue is the depth. We don't have the depth. Our front 11 on both sides of the ball can play with anybody in the country. But when you have to substitute to give them a break, that's where we have a drop-off. You know how I feel about depth. Those depth issues are problems that were created by some other person that's no longer coaching.
I knew we were going to find a way to get back to that.
Well, you asked. I'm telling you.
No problem. No problem. We feel the same way, Michael.
Before we move on, let me ask you guys this. I saw a quote where quarterback Bo Nix says he may or may not be back at Auburn next year. What's you guys' reaction to that? Because he has one more year eligibility, right?
He does.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
I say good luck, Bo. He won't be going to the NFL next year. So if he's not coming back, it's not because he's going to get drafted. We can go ahead and put that on the table right now.
So do you think he would actually transfer to another school?
I think he would. Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
I think he would. Personally, he's had an up and down career at Auburn. He came out highly decorated as a 5-star. He never lived up to expectations. This year, he played better than he ever played the previous 2 years. But again, there were certain times he reverted back. And he's been under a lot of pressure. And let me just say this. The former coach did not do him any favors.
Right.
He brought him in and got rid of all the other competition so there would be nobody to push Bo.
Mm-hmm.
And Bo was the default starter, and that was wrong. And I think Bo could have had a better career had he been managed properly. If he had had to compete and Gus not run off Malik Willis, who would have challenged Bo.
Right.
Okay. So
if we had, we might have had a better year this year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So, you know, some of it can be put on Bo's shoulder for not developing himself, but a lot of it has to be with the way he was managed. And I think that was not fair to put him in that position, to bring him in as a freshman. You get rid of Malik, you get rid of Joey Gatewood, and then you bring in a bunch of people that's behind him that can't push him at all or challenging him, you know. And Thom, you know, when playing, you know, sports, you're pushed by each other. Okay. In any team sports, you got to have somebody there. Like they say, what made Ali was Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier and Ali made each other.
Yes.
Okay.
They pushed each other.
They pushed each other to be better, to be the best they could be.
Yes.
We didn't have that in the quarterback room at Auburn, and that was by design. And so that also was a part of Bo's demise.
I think also when you have somebody who comes in, and I remember we had this one kid that came in and they talked about how great he was before he got there. And the fact that he could throw with both hands. He threw right-handed and left-handed. And what that did was that set this thing up where everybody on that field was waiting on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we got to meet this kid that can throw with both hands. Right. And so on and so forth. The kid never played. It was just too much pressure on him. And he had pressure from within his own camp.
Right.
Because players, when you come in with a lot of hype, they expect you to live up to it. Mm-hmm. Whether the hype was fair or not, whether you've been treated fairly or not, they expect you to be that player that they've read about and heard about on the news. And I think Bo got caught up in a lot of that. Plus, his dad played there. And, you know, sometimes it might just be good to blaze your own ground.
That's true.
So to speak.
That's true. And Thom, I think there's some talk that his dad may be offered a position at the collegiate level at another university. And if so, then there may be a chance that Bo could be looking at possibly transferring to that school.
Well, his dad coached in college. Wasn't his dad offensive coordinator at Miami one year or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. And Georgia Tech too, I think, before Miami.
Again, I think he's you know, there's possibility this dad could get back into the collegiate level of coaching, and if so, then I could definitely see Bo transferring to that.
In my opinion, it would not be a good idea for him to go where his dad is. Mm-hmm. You know, there are a lot of issues with Bo's game. Mm-hmm. And well, who's been teaching him all this time? I mean, you know, I just fundamentally I just saw a lot of flaws in his game. And I was surprised because his dad had been a quarterback. Figured he would have gotten that. Anything else from you guys?
Well, I'd like to take a minute to let our listeners and viewers know that starting January 1, 2022, the No Surprise Act will take effect. And what that is talking about is surprise billing. There have been a lot of issues where people will receive medical treatment, emergency medical treatment, and go to the hospital that's in their network according to their plan. And then they get a surprise bill. And the surprise bills average anywhere from $750 to $2,600, and in many cases more. One of the findings of this report is that people that receive emergency care paid physicians more than 10 times as much as patients without surprise bill emergency care. And this new act is to cut that out. I have to do a shameless plug. The organization that I'm affiliated with, we took up that battle for about 4 or 5 years to have that change. And it started here in Georgia, where a person got ill and had to be airlifted to Grady Hospital. The bill was $50,000 because the air ambulance wasn't a part of her network, and it basically ruined them. And we got Georgia to start to move to change that. So now Congress is doing it. And the way they're going to resolve the issue is that if there is a surprise bill because the physician or somebody is out of network, even though you're at your in-network hospital, the patient is removed from the equation. And the providers and the insurance companies have to resolve the dispute without it bankrupting the patient.
Okay. All right, Barbara, you got anything else?
No.
Okay, I just want to say that your friend Antley has left a comment, and Antley says, please don't send Mike Bobo back to South Carolina, which is where he
That's
is.
exactly where we're sending him.
Okay, well, let's move on. You guys are cold on Mr. Bobo, I tell you. You guys are cold. I'm sure he did the best he could. And, sometimes maybe that's not good enough. So let's go to the G list. The G list is where everybody is a star. The G list is brought to you by Mainstream Financial Group. Let's hear from Mainstream Financial Group.
Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Mainstream's mission is to understand the unique needs of every client and work closely with you, assembling a team to develop and manage your resources to help you accomplish your defined financial goals. Mainstream's financial professionals will provide you with a complimentary, no obligation financial review. Now, these professionals can then offer you custom advice to mend together the pieces of your financial life and come up with a plan that is truly comprehensive. Mainstream Financial assists retirees and those close to retirement in planning for a secure retirement so not to run out of money during your lifetime. You can take advantage of opportunities with tailored advice and the resources to act on it. Mainstream Financial Group, www.mainstreamfg.com, 205-324-0589.
Let your money run out before you do. So let's get to our G list for today. Remember, Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G list where everybody is a star. Today's G list guest is Kai Stevens, the founding director of the Alabama Prison Arts and Education Project, one of the most esteemed and longest running arts and education programs in the country, offering equal access to sustained and quality educational experience to those incarcerated in prison. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, hello.
Good
morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. You are in, I think it's Waverly, Alabama. Isn't that correct?
Well, I live in Waverly, but I am currently in my office on Auburn University's campus. So on campus this morning, bright and early.
Okay. I got my first question. You grow up and you talk about things you want to do when when I grow up, I'm going to do this. And when I grow up, I'm going to do that, so on and so forth. So how did this program, or when did this program enter into your brain that I'm going to grow up and I'm going to run an arts and education project in dealing with prisoners?
Well, that's a great question. I didn't think that I was going to be doing this. I grew up in a small town here in Alabama, north of Auburn. My family has been in Auburn and associated with the university for an extremely long time. So I wanted to get the heck out of Dodge and not come back. And I did actually. I worked in Atlanta for a while, and then I went to graduate school in New York, and New York was lovely. And then I realized how much I missed small town Alabama. But one of the things when I was in graduate school in New York, I did a master's degree in women's history and also an MFA in poetry, and I spent a
Mm.
lot of time studying the period of the 1920s and the 1930s in Alabama and rural culture and thinking, there's a great divide always between who gets access to opportunities based on economics, certainly based on race and also on geography. And I have always just had a real affinity to try to level the discrepancies. I think that it shouldn't just be those privileged individuals who can have access to meaningful interactions with art and education, that we as a society need to make that available for everybody.
So
And
tell
then
me, go on. I'm sorry.
the prison just kind of worked out as a fluke. I got an opportunity. I got a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts to teach poetry, and it was at the Talladega Federal Prison. And
Mm.
I loved it immediately, um, and wanted to keep doing it. So that's how all this got started back 20 years ago. Actually, this I've been doing this 20 years.
And you just said I loved it. Describe to me the program. How does it work? Tell me what you do on an individual or group basis.
Okay. So we began as a program offering arts and humanities classes, built around the idea of a college level class. So semester length courses, usually our classes are 14 weeks long. The classes meet once a week, and they cross the subject matter spectrum wildly. I mean, everything from poetry and creative writing to digging into evolutionary biology and teaching Spanish or French. Um, and part of the founding philosophy of the program is, and this comes from me saying I'm a nerd and I come from a family of nerds. I love learning. I love art. I love being around ideas, and embracing curiosity. And so our program is really rooted in creating communities and spaces inside of prisons to help people flip on their nerd switch, to fall in love with learning, to have a community space that feels welcoming, and a safe is a challenging word inside of a prison, but safer maybe to come in and try to learn and explore and develop the self. So for the first many years of our program, we were a non-credit class program, and we were not able to offer college credit. In 2015, under the Obama administration, there was a call that was put out for what's called Second Chance Pell. And with that opportunity, the myself and the leadership at Auburn worked to build the first ever Bachelor's of Science degree program inside of a prison in Alabama. So we currently have a program at a men's medium security facility. And in the spring, we are launching the college degree program for the women at Tutwiler.
Oh
So,
man.
and now we are starting to advance into, developing what is commonly referred to as reentry programming, to help individuals who have taken our classes when they come back home to get rooted and flourish.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, prisons are generally, I don't know, somewhat of a controversial subject.
Yes.
Uh, how has this been received? I mean, amongst the general population, or in particular the political world? Um, how is this viewed, I guess?
It's a mixed bag. And I think there's two ways to think about it. There are the public facing comments and feedback that you get. And then there is the feedback that you get that is behind the closed doors, right? That is the off the record, not documented. And the behind closed doors, uh, is nearly 100% supportive, right? Because we all know that for human beings to thrive and to develop, you need opportunities to learn and to build yourself. That's it doesn't matter if you're in prison or not. People need opportunities to learn to build their pathways to where they want to go in their life. And individuals who are incarcerated do not have enough opportunities in the state of Alabama to do that. So, because we've been around for 20 years and worked with, many commissioners and leadership at the Department of Corrections, if they didn't like what we were doing and didn't support us, we wouldn't be there. So working inside of facilities is a challenge. The state of prisons in Alabama is pretty abysmal. Um, and that makes some real challenges for us for teaching and also for our students for learning. But the commitment of students to learn and build a better life is just extraordinary.
Okay, I've got to get to Michael and Barbara, but I'm kind of fascinated by this whole subject. So, does a person who's incarcerated, do they have a choice of going to take a class, or if you're committed a certain crime, are you excluded from taking a class? Just
So
trying to figure out that out.
we try to, with our non-credit program, those classes are 100% open door. And we want them to be 100% open door because oftentimes our program is the only place that an individual inside can put their toe in the water to try to start learning again. And um, closing the door is not what we need to do in that circumstance. With the credit program and the degree program, there are requirements because students are applying to be Auburn University students, and they have to go through the application process. But it is a voluntary decision on their part to participate.
Okay. Let me get Barbara and Michael on here, and I know they got some questions. And go, Barbara, you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, thank you, Thom. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Barbara.
I want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I have heard that you have an amazing impact on so many lives with what you have initiated and started here in the state of Alabama. And if I understand it correctly, you're currently operating in what, 10 prisons in the state?
Well, we are not right now because of
Okay.
COVID.
Okay.
COVID really set some pretty intense hurdles. So we are operating in a much smaller number of facilities currently,
Okay.
and that is because the Department of Corrections and doesn't have the capacity to really host us, and also just safety and health concerns.
Yes. Okay. And so I know, just reading some numbers here that I found, you've held like 243 classes. The number of students that you've had in your classes is 3,650. Classrooms hours 6,624, and books donated is over 21,000. How do you solicit volunteers, your donations? What process do you go through to do that, and what can we do to help you, increase those numbers?
Oh, well, Thank you for offering to help. I'm a pretty honest person, and I will say that there are a lot of things that we could do a lot better, and always looking for people to join our community to help shift the tide here with this. Um, you know, we spend a lot of time on Facebook, with our page on Facebook, posting for particular positions that we need, for teachers working with the program. With our new initiative that we're launching in Birmingham, we're going to have a lot of opportunities to develop there for volunteers to come in and work with mentoring. And Michael, I have already made some notes to see if I can bug you later, because one of the things that we are really working to develop is financial literacy training for individuals, either before they come out or right when they get out, and also helping to understand security and issues related to being on the internet and identity theft. And people who leave prison are preyed upon in a lot of really unfortunate ways. So I'm going to bug you if that's okay.
Sure. Any way I can help, I'll be happy to.
We have volunteers come in and do lectures, come in and visit and talk with the students. There are myriad ways to get involved. We are a 100% grant funded program. And so funding is always something that makes me sprout gray hair and makes my eyes twitch a little bit. So there are a lot of opportunities for discussion, to build opportunities here in Alabama. We have some fantastic supporters in New York who have been investing in our program and our students. We have a harder time finding that investment from people here in Alabama. And so maybe there's an opportunity there to explore some possibilities that could exist. And we hear so much negative language in the media about, someone who is incarcerated doesn't deserve something. And it is the most damaging logic, because every opportunity for an arts engagement, a sports engagement, an educational engagement, any kind of community building, right? You are not just affecting the person who participated in that program. It's a ripple effect. So the more you invest in people who are incarcerated, the more you are also investing in their children, and you are investing in their communities, right? Because, and we know this, the more, if you are from a family where generations before you have gone to college, you are more likely to go to college and succeed. If you are a first generation college student, you face a lot of hurdles. There are a lot of completion issues. All of that gets impacted by offering programming to adults, and particularly adults who are inside and working intensely to build a better life for themselves and their families.
Right. Wow. Thank you. And one other question I have, I know that your program is housed there at Auburn University, but you also work with other universities that help and work with you. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how do other universities get involved?
They pick up the phone and call. I will come talk to anyone about what we do and talk about building partnerships. Nothing gets done by a single organization or a single person. And I think when we all can work to get our egos out of the way and build true collaboration and true community and true partnership, we have an extraordinary opportunity to really shift our state and help people One of the things that comes, and this is a little bit of a tangent, and I apologize, I'm a tangent queen.
Right ahead.
We have so many people who come to our classes who say that they never had an opportunity to take a class like ours prior to incarceration. And that someone has to be incarcerated to have access to the arts is a problem. Because just like you have individuals who are drawn to athletics, you also have people who are drawn to the arts. And in the state of Alabama, we don't invest in those things equally. So you're basically saying to young people who want to go into the arts that your dreams and your hopes and your aspirations are not as important. And in that hierarchy, right, you're diminishing the human. And you compound that with all the other issues and isms that are happening in the state, and it just becomes an out of control monster. But we know education changes people's lives. So any college or university, we've worked with the University of Alabama for years. We have we have an extraordinary partnership. For a long time, we were the only two major public institutions in the entire US that collaborated and worked on a project like this. And it's yes, we give each other mortal hell once a year in advance of a football game.
Right.
And then we get busy and we work together because what we are as institutions are educational institutions wanting to help people learn and build a better state. So we've worked with UAB, we've had folks with Huntington, with AUM, all kinds of educational institutions have worked with us, and we're happy to have conversations with anybody about building partnerships.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Michael?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Kai. I'm happy that you're here. And let me just say, I want to compliment you on all your numerous awards and the accolades and recognition you've received nationwide for your work. And
Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
One question that I want to ask you is the recidivism rate in Alabama. How has that been impacted by the work that you do? Because that's a big issue with prisons.
It is a big issue, and I'm going to give potentially a very unpopular answer. We do not think about our program in terms of its relationship to recidivism. And one of the reasons for that is we just fundamental values to us as a person is that there should not be a qualification or an expectation or a statistic that is associated with learning. And there's this connection that often gets made that the only reason someone inside deserves educational or arts programming is because it's going to impact recidivism. Well, we know already that it's going to impact recidivism, but we believe that education should be available to people because they are people. And oftentimes when you come up with even the most well-intentioned statistical analysis, information and data gets manipulated and twisted. And it's really hard to understand all the things that really impact recidivism rates. But what comes from our students who are, especially in our college degree program, all the secondary skills that they are learning while earning an Auburn University degree, while incarcerated, on top of the academic rigor, they're not coming back. we know that, and they know that because they're driven. They see a different opportunity. They see a different purpose. They see something in their life now that they didn't believe was achievable for them as a young person. So the thing about when you think about recidivism, you can't point to a single experience inside that a person has and be able to mark that that experience is the reason why they either stay out of prison longer or they come back, because it has to do with what facility you're located in, your programming that you have access to, what dorm you're in, what the leadership at the prison is like. I mean, there are all of these factors that influence. So we move more toward the help give people the opportunity that they need to build their lives and invest in skills that when they get out, that the recidivism is like it becomes a non-issue for them because they're so driven, so focused on their path.
Okay, thank you for that answer. My next question is, there's talk about prisons being added or the need for more prisons. How do they come to the conclusion of when they need to build another prison and how many? What data is that based on?
Well, I'm not sure that I am the most qualified person to answer that, but I will say for the 20 years that I have been working inside of the Alabama prison system, the prisons are not, the living conditions and the situation of the prisons are not humane. Period. It really is not up for discussion. And so all the people who live at the facility and all the people who work at the facilities and all the family members that come in and just everybody in the whole mix are going into places that are unhealthy and unsafe. And how in the world do you expect people to build, to imagine a different life and build a different life and to have spaces for educational programming and therapeutic programming when the physical structures of the prison can't support that? It's the situation physically inside of the facilities is dire. It's dire. So I am not an advocate for building more facilities and incarcerating more people. I think that we need to be incarcerating less people and changing that structure. And it's also not okay to have people living in the inhumane conditions that they're living in and people working in those conditions. We all know this. You walk into a physical space and you can, the physical space absolutely influences how you feel. So if you're somewhere where there's daylight, it's going to help your mental health. If there's color on the wall, it's going to help your mental health. If there's more space, it's going to help your mental health. And that allows you to feel, you know, maybe more open to taking programming and advancing your life. But when everything around you is dismal and dirty and dark and hot, either really hot or really cold, it's a system telling you again that you don't matter. I know they're not popular. I know it's not popular. And I wish that we were spending our funds helping people up front and investing in education. And we can't have people living like this. Like when you think about recidivism, right? It's like I would argue that the living conditions inside of the prisons are one of the reasons that our recidivism rates are what they are, because you lose your humanness in there.
What's the difference between a prison that's owned by the state of Alabama and a prison that's run by a private entity? Or is there a difference?
There's a big difference. The prisons that are run by the state, so it's all of the oversight, all the staffing, all of the programmatic decisions, everything is at the decision-making process of the Department of Corrections and the state government. When you are working with private prisons, a lot of that is taken away, right? So the private prison is deciding these are the programs that are going to take place, and these are the kind of officers and security staff we're going to hire. And a lot of the private prisons are newer, and so they seem like they might be a good option, but there's less oversight. I personally am not an advocate of the private system. And just personally, systems that profit off incarceration are deeply troubling.
Okay. Michael, Barbara, further questions?
I do have one other question. Kaz, I know that you, in addition to your work, you've been involved in building access to arts and education for all, including those who are incarcerated. You're deeply invested in your community of Waverly, Alabama, which is very close to Auburn, I think.
It is.
But you have served as a town council member, worked as a volunteer for the fire department, and have adopted or rescued over 150 animals, and currently I think you have quite a few. Tell us about all of that, please.
Well, I think on a fundamental level, I am the person who believes that if you want to see change in the world, you don't wait for somebody else to do it. And growing up in rural Alabama and the community that I'm in, I remember when I was actually an undergrad at Auburn back in the early 90s, a few years ago, a family's house in Waverly burned down. And it burned down because there is not a fire department, right? There's no fire trucks, there's no volunteers, there's in that area. And I was just like, well, why am I waiting on somebody else to be part of the solution? So I did that. And again, it's just like with the town council. I think it's very easy for people to sit in the cheap seats and lob complaints at the people who are trying to do something. And it's much harder to actually get in the trenches and try to help something grow or move along. I am an individual who is deeply troubled by a lot of the continued racial dynamics in Alabama, and I want to be a part of change with that. And so the work that I have done with the town council and even with the fire department is part of that. But we spend too much time deciding all the reasons that we shouldn't be kind to each other instead of just being kind to each other. And the animal thing, I have loved animals my whole life. I've got a huge problem. And the part of it is growing up, again, in rural Alabama, people would just dump animals. And I cannot handle seeing something suffering or lost or scared. So I've rescued animals for a very long time and found lots of homes for them. And be careful, I might hit you guys up one day for a cat or a dog or a chicken or a bunny or a donkey. but it's I adore animals. They have
That's
always
great.
been a great joy in my life.
That's great.
Let me
Thank you.
ask one little quick. So you're sentenced to prison. Who or how is it decided whether you go to a public prison or private prison?
Well, in the state of Alabama, there are just facilities run by the state of Alabama.
Okay.
So there are not currently private
Okay.
state facilities. There
Okay.
are some federal facilities in Alabama. So there's the one in Talladega. There's a women's facility in Aliceville, and then there is one in Montgomery at Maxwell. Um, and then there is a private reentry facility that is up near Columbiana. But we are a state that does not currently use that private
Okay.
model.
Okay. Okay. Michael, Barbara, any more questions?
The final question I have is that you teach courses annually in the facilities. What courses do you teach, and how is it determined? I know you say you have an open door policy, but my question is regarding people that are in maximum security. Are they allowed to attend your courses as well, and how do you facilitate?
Yes. So we have been working in maximum level facilities since the inception of the program. And we have all kinds of folks who come to our classes. We do not screen somebody for why they are incarcerated. And the reason for this is my assumption as an educator and as a human being is that if somebody comes to the door and they want to learn how to write poetry, that in that moment, that is what we invest in, right? That we see the person as a person who wants to learn to write poetry, or they want to learn to draw, or they want to take a math class. Facilities will not put somebody in a class that they deem to be a security risk, but we don't have problems. And Barbara, you mentioned some of the statistics earlier. At this point, I think we've had more than 5,500 students take our classes. We don't have problems.
Right.
And part of it is that when we walk in, and it's kind of the misconception that there's always going to be a problem inside. They're just people. And the individuals who come to our class want to learn, and they are very grateful for an opportunity to do that inside of a place where there is not a lot of opportunities. So the classes that I teach these days, so with our credit program, I'm teaching the student success class. I wish I had more time to teach. I travel a lot. Pre-COVID, I traveled a lot, helping other programs around the country kind of conceptualize how they want to build or fundraising, spending a lot of time on the road. So I wish I could teach more, and one of these days I hope I can get back to that. But the whole reason the program exists is for the love of learning and the magic that happens in a classroom. And I think it's really important to stay tethered to that when you are in a leadership position, to keep your focus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been absolutely educational and wonderful for all of us. We appreciate everything that you do, and
Well, thank you
do
for having me.
call on us, call on Michael, Barbara, whomever, if we can be of any future help.
I will do that. Thank y'all
Okay.
so much.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's give Kai's a hand, please. Okay, that was wonderful. My closing comment today is to pay tribute to a couple of men Lee Elder being one. Lee Elder was the first black man, the first man of color to play in the Masters tournament in Augusta, Georgia, 1975. It was a huge deal. It was as big as Jackie Robinson in baseball or any of the other major sports. He passed away this week at 87 years old, and we just would like to commemorate him and remember him for what he did. Another person I'd like to pay tribute to is I call him the Sprinkler Man, Kenneth White. Kenneth White was the sprinkler man. That was his business, was installing and maintaining sprinkler systems. He was a one-man team unless he had a big job and he needed to bring in some of the other guys. He did sprinkler systems for residents and companies alike. Kenny and my relationship lasted for more than 20 years. When my system developed a bug and decided that it might water the guy next door's yard, I called Kenny, and Kenny didn't live far, less than a mile from me, and he would generally show up that day and maintain the system. He was younger than me, but he always referred to me as young man. And how are you doing today, young man? We weren't friends in terms of being everyday buddies, but we were very friendly. And I found out about things because I love to discover what people's journeys are. He had a daughter. He lived in an apartment less than a mile from me. And like me, he was a bicycle rider. When out on my bike, I'd run into him at the 7-Eleven store or the supermarket. He had a girlfriend, and last weekend in their weekend Friday night domino game, Kenny keeled over and died of a heart attack. It threw me for a loop. Kenny and my other friend Harold have worked together on and off for 20 years. Harold and I have talked about Kenny. We will both miss him. I liked Kenny. More importantly, I respected Kenny, the Sprinkler Man. And that is how I see it on this day, November 30th, 2021. And that's our show for today. Thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank Michael, Barbara. Thank our G-list guest, Kai Stevens. Our upcoming G-list guests on TWT are Kelly Thompson, Eric Jones, and his 25 Days of Christmas, and then the man himself, Santa Claus. We want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. and Mainstream Financial Group. You know somebody who you think would make a great guest, please refer them to us at either Tuesday at Thom at Best Girl or Emily at bestgirl.com. We want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer. Thank Sean Jones, the organizer. Thank Michael and Barbara. Thank Joyce, the princess. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.